Greetings and welcome back to TMH English News with me, Deletna Dawalko. The Oromo Liberation Front and the Tigray Armed Forces have seized the town of Kimse in a joint operation against Abiy Ahmed's forces. Diplomats work to press for the ceasefire talks as soon as possible, and Facebook has deleted Ethiopian Prime Minister's post urging citizens to bury the advancing of Tigrayan forces. The Oromo Liberation Front and the Tigray Armed Forces have taken the town of Kimse in a joint operation against Abiy Ahmed's forces. Residents of the Kimse capital of Oromia Special Zone went into the streets to welcome the two allied forces. The residents also provided the fighters with food and water in the show of support. In Kimse in the Amhara region, some 325 kilometers from Addis Ababa, Tigray TV reported that the leadership of the two allied forces have continued to march forward after devising a joint plan. Joint operations will continue in the days and weeks ahead, Getachew confirmed on his Twitter. Earlier Wednesday, OLA spokesman Oda Taribi told AFP Wednesday in his group intended to topple Abiy's government, calling his removal a foregone conclusion. If things continue in the current trajectory, then we are talking about a matter of months, if not weeks, he added. The Tigray Armed Forces, which has been fighting Prime Minister Abiy's government for a year, has claimed for significant territorial gains in recent days, along with the ally Oromo Liberation Army. A regional analyst who spoke on the conditions of anonymity told TPLF was likely to hold off on any advance on Addis Ababa until they secured the highway running from neighboring Djibouti to the capital. That requires seizing the town of Mile, and Getachew said Tuesday that Tigrayan forces were closing in on such town. In related news, 38 innocent people, including children and women, were killed and 42 others injured by the drone strike in the Oromia town of Artuma Farsi Shafe at 9:30 a.m. local time today. Oromo activist Hamza Oromo wrote on his Twitter account that Abiy did this to vent his anger at the Wollo Oromo Front for not fighting against Tigrayan armed forces. The Tigray Armed Forces are receiving warm welcomes in the areas of the Amhara regions where they are taking control, and Tigray TV crew visited Desse and Kompolja and compiled the reactions of residents. One resident was quoted saying, "We have witnessed that Tigray Armed Forces are disciplined. They have not inflicted any harm on anyone since they entered the town of Kompolja, and people of Kompolja are moving about the town as peacefully as possible." The UN Commissioner for Human Rights says the report recommends national authorities to undertake further thorough investigations, adding otherwise an international mechanism will also be considered. Michelle Bachelet was quoted saying, "This is our second day and what we see is disciplined army. They're telling us to calm down. We haven't seen them looting. As you can see for yourself, we have opened up our businesses. If we were scared, we would not have opened our stores. So everything is now back to normal. We encourage you to continue with your advances and rally the people around you, continue and safeguard the country and its people. We are on your side." The Tigray Armed Forces said they were impressed by the warm reception of the people and in Desse and Kombolcha, which is the contrary to Abiy's government propaganda. After a year of fighting, Tigrayan forces make significant advances, and today marks the one-year anniversary of a brutal fighting between government forces, regional Amhara militiamen aligned with the Eritrean forces against the Tigray Armed Forces. In recent weeks, the Tigray Armed Forces and Oromo Liberation Army have joined in the fight against the central government and claim to make significant advances. These two allied forces say that they are advancing on the capital of Addis Ababa and that it could fall within months or even weeks. The Ethiopian government declared a 6-month state of emergency on Wednesday and called on the residents to defend their neighborhoods if the advancing alarm movements arrive in the capital. Debretsion Gabar-Mikael said the president of Tigray region blamed the Ethiopian government and its allies for causing the suffering in the past year. The warmongers decided to continue with the war, and we entered into war because the only option we had is to destroy our enemies by force, said Debretsion. State Department spokesperson Ned Price called on the warring parties to find and end the fighting and protect the lives and the rights of their citizens. Michelle Bachelet, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, said the year-long conflict was marked by extreme brutality. A joint report by the UN Human Rights Office and the government-created Ethiopian Human Rights Commission found that the sexual violence has been rampant in the conflict, detailing reports of gang rapes by various parties against women, girls, but also against men included, as well as boys. The report indicated that war crimes would have been committed but fell short for calling the war on Tigray a genocide. The year-long conflict has plunged about 400,000 people in Tigrayan region, including famine reasons, killed thousands of civilians, forced more than 2.5 million people in the north to flee their homes, according to the UN. Diplomatic efforts have been stepped on Thursday to press for ceasefire talks after Tigrayan forces from the north of the country made advances towards the city this week. The U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Jeffrey Feltman, was expected to arrive in Addis Ababa later in the day to press for a halt to military operations and start ceasefire talks. The State Department said he will hold talks on Thursday and Friday to urge all Ethiopians to commit to peace resolution of grievance through dialogue, and Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni called on East African bloc leaders meeting on November 16th to discuss the conflict which pits the central government against the Tigray Armed Forces as well as its allies. Separately, the bloc, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, appealed for an immediate ceasefire, and it urged the parties to show restraint, de-escalate tensions, and resolve their differences through dialogue. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta issued a statement on Wednesday saying the fighting must stop. He called on the rival parties to put down their arms and cease the fighting to talk and to find a path to sustainable peace. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he has spoken to Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on Wednesday to offer my good offices to create the conditions for a dialogue so the fighting stops. U.S. Embassy in Ethiopia allows voluntary departure of some staff as well as their family. The decision came after the U.S. said on Wednesday it was gravely concerned about this escalating violence and the expansion of hostilities in the city. State Department spokesperson Ned Price called on all warring parties to end the fighting and protect the lives and the rights of their citizens. He said the State Department has now updated the Tribal Advisory of Ethiopia to Level 4. What that means, we are advising U.S. citizens do not travel to Ethiopia. Price said the U.S. recommended that the U.S. citizens in Ethiopia consider departing now using commercial options that still remain available. The U.S. Embassy in Ethiopia has authorized the voluntary departure of non-emergency government staff and family members because of armed conflict, and has said it on its website as the Tigray Armed Forces in the north make their advances quickly. Travel to Ethiopia is unsafe, and further escalation is likely, it added. On Wednesday, Britain urged its citizens to review their need to stay in Ethiopia and consider leaving while commercial options were still available. Jeffrey Feltman, the U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, is expected to arrive in Addis Ababa to press for a halt on military operations in the north and to seek the start of a ceasefire talk as soon as possible. Facebook has removed Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for violating its policies against inciting violence. Abiy's call to bury the enemies in a statement was posted on Abiy's official Facebook page over the weekend, and on Sunday, Abiy called on citizens to take up arms to block the advances of Tigray Armed Forces. People have also been arrested, and many people in Addis Ababa since the government declared a state of emergency on Tuesday. Police spokesperson Fasika Fanta said on Thursday that residents told Reuters on Wednesday that many Tigrayans have been arrested, despite Fasika's claim that the arrests were not based on ethnicity. The police said that they were only arresting those who are directly or indirectly supporting the Tigray Armed Forces, saying this includes morale, financial, and propaganda support, added by the spokesperson. The streets and the shops in Addis Ababa, a city of around 5 million people, were busy as usual on Thursday morning, though some residents said they were feeling a very uneasy calm. One man who spoke on the condition of anonymity talked of rumors about the approach of the armed groups, adding most people accuse the government of what has happened lately. That wraps up our news for today. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll have more for you tomorrow.